Dr. Thompson, thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to start in. Jim Brady, as I said, is away this week, but this is part of our quarterly check-in. And I guess, where I would like to start is talking about the recent performance scores that came through, and some of it is very sobering. There are some interesting and sometimes positive data as well. But I think what is probably difficult for you and your colleagues is to look at that English proficiency at the 10th grade level. It appears to be the lowest in the state. I know that this is not going to be solved instantaneously, but I hope you can give listeners a sense of what you feel is the problem and what do you believe, working with the board, what is the solution?
First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me a platform and an opportunity to be able to highlight our district. And I know that as a school system, nothing's easy. And it's such from what I'm understanding now and knowing, it's such a complex organization. School Impaired is such a complex system that it takes a lot to get things right. So with that being said, the question as it relates to our data, which is troubling, and we take full ownership for our data. And we know that we have a lot of work to do. And I say one of the things that we have started out this year with doing is we collaborated with a consultant organization called Creative Leadership Solutions. And Creative Leadership Solutions is an organization started by Doug Reeves. I don't know if you are familiar with Doug Reeves, but he's a heavyweight in the field of education and teaching and learning in professional learning communities and things of that nature. So one thing that we decided to do is invest heavily in our administration. So that's the principals, that's the assistant principals, and that's the content supervisors, and the rest of the executive team, my executive team, and focusing on improving instruction through instructional leadership. And we feel that that's not, of course, not going to solve everything, but we believe it starts with the leadership at top. So we got to improve our instructional leadership as it relates to giving feedback to teachers, as it relates to going into the classrooms and giving and knowing what instruction looks like and what good instruction looks like versus what not so good instruction look like, and being able to coach the teachers that coach all teachers, because people think that just because teachers are performing that they don't need coaching as well. Even if you're a talented person, you still need coaching. Yeah. So we want to provide coaching across the board to all our teachers, but make it more of an individualized approach to whatever teacher is struggling to provide a good teaching and learning environment for our students. So we as the leaders had to be the first ones to be present in that process, be present in going to the classrooms, be present in providing feedback. So what we're doing every month is twice a month, Creative Leadership Solution comes to our organization. We have a day of sitting down, discussing what we're going to do for our walkthroughs the following day. So we look at the feedback and the management by walking around, the observations that we have previously done, and we analyze that data, look at that data. And then the second day of the training, we go as a district into the classrooms, looking at teaching and learning in the classroom, and then calibrating our thoughts, coming back and calibrating our thoughts and saying, what did we see at this school? What did we see at this school? And this, I want to reiterate that this is not a punitive approach. Is not a approach to look at teachers and say, oh, we got you. We're trying to get you to be punitive, trying to make sure that it's seen as purely a coaching thing, but more so about the leadership in the school district being better instructional leaders. So that's what the premise of it had. Then we'll go into a second phase next year, the next school year, to continue to try to improve our improve our teaching and learning. As for the scores, I don't think there's one problem or incident that has caused this. But one thing we do know, that if a person gets to high school and the proficiency rate in high school is bad, then we haven't done something right at the beginning of their educational careers. So that means that student 9 times out of 10 has matriculated through our educational system, either masking his inability to read, or being possibly pushed through. There's a whole bunch of things that could have been current of why that student got to 10th grade and is unable to read and write at that age, which is just it's a bad look for the district to have students at that level that can't read and write.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to provide a strong foundation for our students and improve our instructional practices and teaching and learning at the elementary level. Now, there are a whole plethora of situations that I think that has caused this, but I can't pinpoint one and say it's just this or it's just this. I think it's a culmination of events that have places at 23rd, quite frankly.
Is there any low-hanging fruit when you all go into the classrooms? There's a feeling that teachers can move their students further along by doing X, Y, and Z?
That's a great question. I think there is low-hanging fruit by doing what we call management by walking around and getting a consensus of what the foundation of good instruction looks like across the district. So that's why we want to sit down and have conversations so we can calibrate what that looks like. So management by walking around are about 2 to 3 minutes. It's just specific look fors that you're going around the district to see in the classroom of what's going on. For example, how is the objective written? Is it written in a student friendly language, or is it even an objective at all? Is it easy to digest, and have the students actually been able to understand what the objective means, what they're actually being able to be asked to be completed at the end of that lesson. So that's a piece of low-hanging fruit. You can look at the transitions, making sure that students are losing transitional time from task to task. So, for example, at the start of class, how long are you taking for students to get on task to be ready for the lesson? If that's taking 5 to 10 minutes, that means we know that there's some type of behavior management issue. So we can diagnose that, and then we can prescribe some things. So that's the foundation we're trying to lay. So that will be our low-hanging fruit. So then as we transition from the management by walking around to a little bit more detailed observations, which we call walkthroughs. And that's what we're looking at, basically how the teacher is teaching. So that's where we are in the process right now. But that low-hanging fruit is just ensure that the very basics of education is being done: lesson planning, objective writing, system processes and procedures. So we can be able to go in that, and you can tell that if you go into a classroom within 2 to 3 minutes very easily.
I mean, when you look at this data, when do you feel it would be fair for the community to evaluate your success? I mean, do you feel like numbers could go up by the next time this is reported, or do you feel like we have to really be looking long range and ask for patience from the community?
I think all the above. I think you can see. So I'm gonna give you an example. I think you can see an increase from this year to next year. I don't know how big, but you definitely, because even with the way things are now, if you look at our data in the grade levels and the particular ELA math, we did increase 2%, which is not, people don't understand, oh, that's so small. But if you keep adding that up over the course of the year, that will add up to something substantial. But it's been that increase with just the things that we have starting to be able to get into place. Now we're starting to even get more things in place. So I think I'm highly confident that we can make some progress on top of the 2% that we did this past year. And I can give you some concrete examples. So for one, if you look at our reading scores and mathematical scores, some of that has to do with writing. So there's points on there that some students didn't get any points for writing at all. And there's a large percentage of our population that didn't write anything on an MCAP. So that means they got 0 points in that area. There's some that wrote 1 point, they got 1 point. So you can get all the way up to 22 points for writing, just for writing something. So if we can focus on writing every day, and it could be just low level writing as it relates to just writing sentences, or give them a sentence starters and ask them to complete something, journaling, have them writing something about their day. It can be just the very basics that can increase the MCAP scores just as it relates to writing. And if we look, our numbers as it relates to writing is staggering, because we have to start focusing on that writing piece. So that's just, that piece alone would give us a bump academically in mathematics and reading.
Yeah.
Then you look at if you look at our data, we have a bunch of kids what we call, I hate saying bubble kids, but they're called the cusp kids. So that means that they're not too far away from proficiency. So if you do some interventions and some targeted learning for these group of students, they will be able to move forward. So we got those two things that if we can make some type of correction in, then you should be able to see some progress over from this year to next year. And we have a host of, if you look at our data, because the data you guys just see the flat line. That's the community just sees, okay, there 30% of our kids are proficient, 8% are proficient in math, 30% are proficient in reading, and that's all you see. But once you start getting into the data and analyzing the data and then breaking it down, then you see that there are some points that you can definitely there's some emphasis and some focus you can put on different aspects of our data, and that will be able to move the needle. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I think what was interesting when I looked at the data briefly before we started the interview was the fact that you had made some significant progress in math scores, and especially at the third and sixth grade level. And I guess the question, how is it that you could have such a challenge with English and yet see that 1 or 2% growth in the math skills?
I think there's a lot of, and I don't never like to bring the state up, but if you look at the state as well, they're not performing that well in math, and across the state of Maryland, we're not performing well in mathematics. So that could be a combination of things. But I'll start with us as it relates to our instructional practices and making sure that we have alignment. So we just did a curriculum audit on grades K through 5, as in all our subject areas from K through 5 of math, reading, social studies, and science. And one thing we already know now is that our curriculum is pretty much aligned, well, horizontally and vertically. So now we know that it's not our curriculum causing this mathematical issue that we have. Now we got to look at alignment of how are we aligning the standards to our curriculum, the state standards to our curriculum, and also understanding is our curriculum aligned to MCAP? Like what items are MCAP? Are we testing the same thing on MCAP and our curriculum? Are we doing the same things? Are the students taking totally different assessment, or not a totally different assessment, but being assessed on some things that aren't covered in our curriculum?
I see.
So there could be that issue. And then there could be a teaching and learning issue where you have to improve the instruction that students are getting inside of the classroom. Because mathematics it's a pretty tough contextual. I think kids have to conceptualize math, or it has to be taught in a different manner. I don't know if mathematics, the way it's taught, is a benefit to some of the students. They might need something different as it relates to more hands-on activities for math. Some type of other learning environment, some type of other learning style that they may have, that we as a district got to figure out how the students are they best learn. And I don't know if we do a good job of that yet. That's something I'm still trying to tease out. But I think the math piece is going to be a little more difficult to figure out. And let me just add this as well. We also have interventions, and we got to make sure the interventions are aligning to the curriculum, and also what's being to the standards. And once you have that alignment and that cohesion, then you look at your teaching and learning and make sure that the teaching and learning is adequately addressing the students' needs in your classroom, as well as interventions.
How easy is it for you as a superintendent to change curriculum? As you go through this process and you see weaknesses or sometimes strengths, but how do you calibrate that? And can you get that work done so quickly so it can impact students' scores and hopefully their lives?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's too difficult. Of course, I will have to confer with the team. And some of the curriculum, I know we deal with illustrative math, or some say illustrated. I think it's illustrative math, but I'll pronounce it like that. And we've just been doing that the last couple of years. So you want to see how that changes the trajectory to see if it works. You want to give it some time to work. But for me, I'm not a person I don't have a lot of patience when it comes to stuff not working. So some stuff I will be a little bit more lenient with to see if it works, and other stuff I will cut it as soon as I understand that it's not working so well. But I think you got to keep a pulse on it and be actively engaged with your principals. So I'm actively engaged with the principals, actively engaged with the content supervisors, and actively engaged with the ELA coaches, which is reading and math coaches. And I think once you continue to immerse yourself with all these different constituencies and stakeholders that's involved in the learning process for the kid, you'll be able to make a much better decision. So I try to keep that at my fingertips, where I know a little bit of everything and how the curriculum is being implemented inside the classroom. But the idea of making sure that we had a coherent curriculum was the first things first to make sure. So we can take that off the shelf. That's the issue with our math scores.
Yeah. Hey, I had one more question. How's the cell phone experiment going?
So far so good, but students are savvy. The students are so savvy, and they're just so savvy. I tell you, they got so many good qualities that in innovative thinking when they really put their mind to not wanting to do something. So it's really funny that they can think of some of the things they do, like bringing a burner phone, cutting a pouch open. They've just been doing some different things, but it's been going relatively well in some schools and not so well in some grade levels. So it's still a work in progress to make sure that the students are actively there for education and taking that one distraction and trying to minimize that as much as possible. I just recently read a book called The Anxious Generation, which is a very good book that talks about the development of the students over a course of time as it relates to social media, cell phones, tablets, et cetera. It was really, really, really good read.
Yeah. Well, it must be interesting. When do you give a full report on this new approach?
So what I'll do is monthly. So we meet with the principals monthly, I'm in the schools all the time. So I was thinking that we was going to do a report probably by December to see how it's going, beginning of December to see how it's going. It just started October 21st, so at least give it a 30 days or so to see. But I have been getting updates, talking to administrators and going into the classroom, sending emails asking about how it's going. So the jury's still out on that.
Yeah, and have you heard from the parents?
Actually, I haven't heard too much from the parents. Initially, it was even initially when we rolled it out, it was, I would say, like 85% to 90% was good comments and things, but the 10% wasn't so good comments. But I can understand their apprehension because a lot of it was dealing with emergency situations. Like if emergency situation occurred, how would they get in contact with their kids? That was a legitimate one. Then there was just some that just were not appeared to be legitimate, more of a personal preference.
Yeah. Hey, this has been great. Is there anything else you want the community to know that this quarter?
So I don't know if I got an opportunity to tell you, we're working on our foundation that we're trying to change the culture, and climbing the culture of DCPS is built on strategic urgency, accountability, and professionalism. And then we got 4 key priorities, which are instructional leadership, which I spoke to you about briefly, organizational alignment. That's how we're organizing from horizontally and vertically. That is also financial health and transparency. And that is also differentiating programming. Them are our 4 key priorities that we're going to implement over the next 4 years. Lastly, we are in a strategic planning process this year. So we have done a lot of interviews with students, staff, and faculty. We had 3 community meetings to get the community's buy-in and input to how they want the school system to be. And we should have a finalized document at the end of May. And lastly, I would like to say that I believe that education is a responsibility of the community, not just a responsibility of the school system. And I think it takes a collective responsibility to make the changes that we need. We want to go from 23rd to 15 by 2028. So we're not going to be able to do that alone. We're going to need the community support and nonprofit organizations and other organizations within the community to help out, and that could look like an opportunity for our students to have tutoring services in your organization, or you to be able to provide after school tutoring, you to be able to provide parent support, so things like that. But it's going to take a collective effort to get to where we need to be at the end of 4 years.
Yeah. Dr. Thompson, thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple of months.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great.